I'm Jane Donnelly, for those who don't know me. I'm co-chairing programs this year with Jen Daler. I'm very pleased to announce and to introduce Topher Hamblett, who is Executive Director of Save the Bay. Save the Bay's mission is to protect and improve Narragansett Bay. Its vision is a fully swimmable, fishable, healthy Narragansett Bay accessible to all. Now, my challenge right now is to introduce you to Topher and keep the introduction to a minute and a half, which is difficult because Topher's been around for a while and done a lot of wonderful things. His work at Save the Bay has spanned more than 30 years as a volunteer, intern, and advocate. As executive director, Topher works with Save the Bay's board of directors and staff to set strategic priorities, implement campaigns, and raise support for the organization. His other endeavors include service in the Peace Corps in Sierra Leone from 1985 to 1987, on the board of directors of Rhode Island Public Radio, the International Institute of Rhode Island, and Common Cause Rhode Island. He's currently on the board of directors of the New England First Amendment Coalition and the Foundation of West Africa, which supports community radio stations in Sierra Leone and neighboring countries. He is a native and resident of Barrington, where he and his wife, Martha, raised 2 daughters. When Topher was appointed executive director of Save the Bay, a search committee member on the board said, "Anyone who takes the helm here needs a unique skill set, complete with an understanding of how to move the needle on policy issues, how to unite people around a common cause, and how to communicate complex topics, as well as an ethos of hard work and integrity." Topher brings all this and more to the position. Topher's talk today is entitled "The History and Future of Save the Bay, a Story of Resilience and Hope." Let's give Topher a warm welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Jane. This is special for me because I am a native of town, and my wife and I raised our kids here, as you said, and a few of you knew and worked with my mom back in the 70s and 80s on things like Tap-In and Encore, and it's great. So for me, it's very special to be here. I also went to school in 5th and 6th grade in this building, when this room was a gymnasium. So a lot of fond memories here in town and here in this place, actually. I am grateful to be here. I'd like to talk about Save the Bay's work, and especially about Narragansett Bay and where things are headed now. And there's a lot going on. Before I get going, though, I want to recognize Warren Prell, who's been on Save the Bay's Board of Directors and Program and Policy Committee and brings great science heft to our work. So, Warren, I appreciate your being here and for your great work. Jane mentioned our mission. It is to protect and improve Narragansett Bay. It's simple but powerful. And when we talk about Narragansett Bay, we're not just talking about the coastline in this place where we live. Is actually a 1,700 square mile area that to the northwest goes up to Worcester, Massachusetts. That's where the Blackstone River starts. And to the northeast up to Brockton, Massachusetts, just south of Boston. So it's a huge area, and about 60% of it is actually in Massachusetts. So we have our work cut out for us. As you can see by this image, the Taunton River is in yellow up to the right in your screen, and the Blackstone River is in green, and there are a whole bunch of what are called subwatersheds or river systems that feed into Narragansett Bay. And one of the things that makes the bay so great and so productive is that it's an estuary, a place where salt water and fresh water meet and mix and create a real abundance of life. It's spectacular. We are housed in Providence at a place called Fields Point, which is on the Johnson & Wales campus, the Harborside campus. We've been there since 2005. We used to rent buildings in downtown Providence or up by the Capitol building. But the board and staff at the time in the 1990s sort of was at this very important point in the organization's history, and the economy was tough, and there was a big decision: do we shrink or do we grow? And we had a fledgling education program, marine science education program, where we were just trying to reach fifth graders in Rhode Island, period. The decision was a bold one, and that was to grow and really go big. And we managed to secure a lease from Johnson & Wales for about 6 acres of property on the Providence River, right next to where the port is. And we set out to build a building that's environmentally friendly, efficient, but also create a network of trails that are accessible to everyone, especially the neighborhood, the south side neighborhood of Providence, for people to come down and enjoy, go fishing, go walking, picnicking, whatever it is they want to do, or just to take solace in being by the bay. And the other part of that growth, though, was to build docks and, over time, 3 vessels that could really enable many more students to reach Narragansett Bay and connect to it over time. And we have done that. So on a typical day in the fall, winter, or spring, you will see busloads of kids coming in, going through our classrooms, and then boarding vessels and going out onto the bay and connecting to it, many for the first time ever. So we were founded in 1970. I love this photo. This was actually the cover of Life magazine, which we superimposed on our Tides magazine when we turned 50 in 1970. And it's a serious-looking group of people, as you can tell. They, at the time, in the 60s, were facing the prospect of an oil refinery being built in Tiverton. And at the time, they formed Save Our Community, SOC. And this proposal was actually supported politically by newspaper editorial boards, which were much more powerful at the time than they are now. And with the promise from the company that it would not only not harm life, but improve it in their town. Jobs, tax revenues, and don't worry about the bay or the land around the refinery. These people, this small handful of people, actually challenged that notion. On their own dime, they went around the country and visited communities that were hosting oil refineries, if I could use that term. And the more they learned, the more trouble they became. And this is before cell phones, before internet. This is when it was landlines, newspapers, and letter writing. And that was what the campaigns were made of, literally door-to-door campaigning. And this is also before there was an environmental protection agency, before there were, before there was a coastal resources management council, anything like that. And this group of people mobilized their fellow Tiverton residents and won the defeat of that proposal by 1 town council vote on one night. They immediately pivoted and saw what was coming for Narragansett Bay in the 70s, which was a lot more of these oil refineries, liquid natural gas terminals, several nuclear power plants. They saw the threat of what I would call the over-industrialization of Narragansett Bay. And so they formed Save the Bay not to stop any development on the bay, but to manage it. So the bay didn't swing one way or the other to the extreme. They weren't radicals, they weren't Greenpeace, they weren't anything like that. They just wanted the bay to be healthy and accessible. And so they formed Save the Bay 55 years ago. And what a difference. So one of the, after defeating a whole series of these energy proposals in the 70s, they turned to water pollution in the bay. When I was a kid here, and when some of you were kids here, Barrington Beach was not safe to swim in much of the time. And that's because raw sewage was being belched out of pipes in Providence and coming down river, closing swimming areas, closing shellfish beds. So Save the Bay started actually with a big lawsuit against the city of Providence. At the time, their sewage plant was being run by the cronies of Buddy Cianci, who was mayor. And it was everything that was being flushed down toilets in about 300,000 homes was washing up on the shores of East Providence, Cranston, Warwick, Barrington. So Save the Bay litigated that and won a Federal Clean Water Act lawsuit, and that led to the construction of what you see here, which is the Fields Point wastewater treatment plant in Providence. So that was the beginning of a big turnaround. The Upper Bay now, the Providence River, where our offices are, what used to be an open sewer is now a place that is used for fishing, kayaking, community boating. People are on the water. Sometimes they're in the water. Last year, because of the constant improvements that have taken place over decades, the city of East Providence announced that they were going to open a swimming beach at Crescent Park. And that, for those of us who grew up here, that's unthinkable. They're also aiming to open another beach farther north at a place called Sabin Point. So progress is being made, it's continuing, but I will tell you that at Save the Bay, we guard against complacency. We can't let these gains that we've worked so hard for slip away. Another major turning point in the Bay, which I want to call your attention to, is the Barrington Point Power Plant in Somerset. Do you remember those towers that used to be there? Yeah, those were the result of a series of actions that took place over time. That was a coal-fired, oil-fired power plant. At the time, it was built in the, I think, 50s, early 60s. It was drawing in 1 billion gallons per day of water from Mount Hope Bay. And it was using that water to cool all of its equipment before dumping it back out. Now, when it drew that water in, it was also drawing in the larvae and juvenile flounder, and really caused the collapse of the winter flounder fishery in Mount Hope Bay. When it dumped the water back out after that damage, it was dumping it back out at 95 degrees or so. So it was almost boiling Mount Hope Bay. So we sort of worked on the advocacy side for getting tighter limits on the plant, and our friends at the Conservation Law Foundation litigated that too. And eventually, those towers were put in as an alternative cooling system, and then Big Energy being what it is, that plant was bought by a larger company and then retired. And that's when those towers were imploded so dramatically a few years ago. But that was a big turning point for Mount Hope Bay. So here's what we do. We do a lot of different things. We advocate for policies, for laws that protect the Bay. We also have to spend a lot of time up at the State House defending the Bay against some pretty harebrained ideas. And that takes vigilance. And usually the monkey business that results in threats to the Bay happens at the very end of the session when they think no one's looking, but we are always watching. And so that's part of our job, is to fend off threats to the Bay, bad policies. But what we try to do is get good laws in place. We also try to rally the Assembly and the public to make big investments in Narragansett Bay, like that wastewater treatment plant I showed you earlier. It takes money to build clean water infrastructure and to maintain it, and upgrade it, and improve it. And I will tell you that the Narragansett Bay Commission has done a phenomenal job taking its mandate and running with it, and has been a huge player in the restoration of the Upper Bay. But there's a lot of work to do at the State House. We can never sleep, ever. We are on the water, watchdogging what's going on. Often we are the organization that's called when someone sees something troubling, like if they think they see a pollution problem or something being built illegally, which I'll get to in a minute. But it's important that we are on the water and in the water, following what's going on with developments around the Bay. The image you see to the left is a junkyard, the infamous Rhode Island Recycled Metal Scrap Yard, which unfortunately our Department of Environmental Management let run amok, and as you can see, pile up junk illegally and not control any of the runoff from that site. So that site has actually caught fire several times in the last couple of years, which poses a big danger to everyone, not just the water quality of the Bay, but also this is a place where there are gas tanks, oil tanks, et cetera, et cetera. So for the neighborhood, for the whole port, it's a danger. We are hearing that site is going to be sold, and Rhode Island Recycled Metals can't leave soon enough, as far as we're concerned. We do a lot of work in salt marsh restoration, including in the town, which I'll talk to you in a minute about. As post-European development, if you really look closely around Barrington, you'll see that roads and bridges, transportation networks actually cut through and over and sometimes bury salt marshes. These are the nurseries of life in Narragansett Bay. It's where young marine life, bird life, can survive their earliest days and thrive. But many of our salt marshes over the decades have been lost, and thanks to climate change, we're going to lose more. But we are very active in restoring what we can, and as I'll tell you in a minute, in helping these marshes adapt to changing conditions from a changing climate. We restore rivers too. You know, we're the birthplace of the Industrial Revolution here in Rhode Island. You know, Slater Mill's a famous place. But the Industrial Revolution meant, among other things, the damming up of rivers that feed Narragansett Bay. They were used for power. But over time, most of them became obsolete. And actually what they also did without, this is sort of the law of unintended consequences, but when you build a dam in a river, you're blocking fish passage up into fresh water. So fish need, like herring, need to go up into the freshwater parts of the bay to spawn. So we basically cut off these transportation routes for fish throughout Narragansett Bay. About 15, 20 years ago, we started down the path of restoring rivers or river connectivity by knocking out dams. And that work continues to this day. This is the Blackstone River. Our school education programs reach over 12,000 kids a year. And this is hands-on marine science education programs. We work with every single school district that we work with has its own needs and requirements. So our education staff works with each school and school district to make sure that the programs we're providing in marine science help them meet their curriculum and their course requirements. And that's really, really important. As I said, many kids come out on our vessels for the first time in their lives connecting to Narragansett Bay. Each vessel holds about 30 students. The vessel leaves our docks, and the vessels leave our docks and go out and drag nets along the bottom of Narragansett Bay. The students actually haul the nets up. We have holding tanks on board, and they actually are holding, measuring, smelling, touching the marine life that they pull up and learning a lot along the way. This is open to you all. You don't have to be students to get out in the bay. We have steel watches that are starting up in November, and nature cruises as well. And the idea with all this is to connect people to the bay. The bay is beautiful in the winter, so I really recommend that you bundle up and get out there and see it in a way that you've never seen it before. Out on the table outside, there's some information on that. Take anything and everything that I left on the table out there, please. But seal watches are great. I don't think we had so many seals, at least when I was a kid in Narragansett Bay, but they've come here in droves now and are part of the landscape. The other thing we've done to connect people to the bay is open a new aquarium. We used to have a small facility on Easton's Beach in Newport, and that got flooded out by Sandy in 2012, and then flooded out again and again and again. So we did a lot of upfront research to figure out where can we have an aquarium in Newport. And lo and behold, this great building right next to the RIPTA bus station downtown opened up, and we signed a lease with the city to build an aquarium that opened a year ago, March. It's spectacular. The first year of operation, we had 75,000 visitors. And I think we're on track to do that again. Very hands-on, very interactive. And again, it's another way to connect people to Narragansett Bay. Some for the first time, and some it's kind of a reconnection. It has been that for me. I learn a lot when I go to the aquarium, as much as I go. Full disclosure, this is my grandson. So that's the thing. A lot of what we do, we can't just be a staff and board working hard. The way to get people to really be active in caring and taking care of Narragansett Bay, caring for and taking care of the bay, is to connect them to the bay. And we do that not just through the programs I talked about, but through volunteer opportunities. So volunteers can come out on boats with us. Warren Prell kind of helped us organize Upper Bay monitoring years ago, or we glommed onto what you were doing and expanded it. But getting people involved in actually monitoring the bay's health is a really great way to connect them to it. Lots of volunteers are out restoring salt marshes that have been impaired over the years. And it could be school kids or garden clubs or anyone who wants to do it. We have lots of shoreline cleanups. Please pick up this when you leave today. This is our International Coastal Cleanup Report. We're part of a global effort to not only pick up trash along the coast during the fall, but actually count everything we pick up. Volunteers count everything, bottle caps, plastic bottles, et cetera, et cetera. And then we feed that into an international database. And I can tell you one of the trends we're seeing is plastics. Plastic bottles and bottle caps are the most picked up item. Cigarette butts are, I think, a close second. Those are made of plastics too. So what do we don't do this just to make beaches look nicer and people feel good, but we are actually using this to campaign for a bottle deposit bill in Rhode Island. So 4 out of the 6 states in New England have, 4 out of the 6 have bottle deposit programs, which are a proven way to reduce litter along the coast and along roadways and everything else. So, but we're up against a very tough, powerful lobby that is liquor industry, beverage distributors, convenience stores who don't want change. So like everything else we do, it's a tough uphill climb, but we stick with it until we get it. And that's one of the things I really like about Save the Bay is that we are determined to make progress. We have our Bay Swim every summer. This is our biggest fundraiser. Probably several hundred volunteers work at the Bay Swim. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year. This year we raised a record $315,000 to support our programs. And it's one of the most inspiring things to me, and I've been working at the swim for 30 years, is when the horn goes off and the swimmers jump in the water to swim 2 miles from Naval Station Newport over to Jamestown. It's spectacular, and I still get goosebumps actually from it. This coming year is going to be our 50th swim. Yep. Now on to the, this is what's really defining our work now, climate change. Do you all recognize this spot? Yeah. So indeed, the climate is changing. Temperatures are rising. Ice caps are melting. Waters are rising, and at a very rapid clip. The estimates that you hear from scientists range a little bit, but I can tell you that by the end of this century, we are probably looking at 7, 8, 9 feet of sea level rise. So pick your favorite part along the coast of Barrington. Picture just your everyday high tide being 7 feet higher than it is today. And then think about places like Mathewson Road, or the waterfront in Warren, or Route 114, either side of the White Church. So if you just use your imagination, it's powerful, it's coming. These are a couple of images that were done, I think, by URI. So the image on the left is Water Place Park. This is from, it's like 10 years ago, but or even longer, but it doesn't matter. The one on the left is sort of regular high tide. The one on the right is with just 3 feet of sea rise. So just absorb that for a minute and picture 5 feet of sea rise and 7 feet of sea rise. Picture downtown Providence, which was underwater during the 38 hurricane, I think in the 54 hurricane too. These are profound changes going on. The other thing that's happening is that waters are warming too. So we are seeing some species that we've sort of taken for granted for a long time, like lobster and winter flounder, are disappearing. But other species are coming up from warmer southern Atlantic waters, like scup. So the challenge of managing the fishery, if you will, for Narragansett Bay is a great one too. Now, that can be like overwhelming and even depressing to think about, but that we just can't get stuck in that mode. We have to do something about it, right? We have to do everything we can. I'm very happy to say that here in Barrington, we're doing a lot. The town's doing a lot. We're doing a lot with the town. These are all projects, most of them about salt marsh restoration and salt marsh, what we call adaptation. So because of these rising waters, some salt marshes are going to be lost forever, lots of them actually. The salt marsh is probably in the middle of 100 Acre Cove, for instance. But there are places where, if given a chance, salt marshes might be able to migrate upland and inland as seas rise. And part of our job is to work with land trusts and local groups and cities and towns to identify where those places are and secure those lands, buy those lands out, so that the marshes can indeed migrate upland and inland as seas rise. It's a huge challenge. I would say we've probably done more work in Barrington and Warwick than any other places around Narragansett Bay. And that's in part because the town's been, and the townspeople here have been so receptive to it. I know the town created a resilience plan, which I think is great. So here's one example of, this is not a march part, this is Barrington Beach, which has undergone a transformation over the last number of years. The beach used to have a lot more paved parking area right sort of close to the water. But our habitat restoration director, Wendy Ferguson, worked with the town to identify a way to at least extend the life of the beach and people's enjoyment of it. So what we did was we actually tore up the parking lot, sort of cut the number of parking spaces down, planted lots of dune grass with lots of volunteers in town, and then created what is still a beautiful place, just not quite as much parking. This is not going to last forever, but it at least is going to extend the life of this beach as a good public place. And we are doing this all around Narragansett Bay, all around the bay. And we used to have one person doing this, and now we are about to have our fourth person join the team because the workload is so great. The other thing about rising seas is that they're changing the shorelines, and so are these very intense winter storms that we're getting, or coastal storms, which seem to be more frequent and more intense as time goes on. So I think the natural sort of inclination of people, if you own a coastal property and the sea is coming and the storms keep coming and the erosion keeps coming, I think your instinct is to hardwall it, to protect it, armor it, so you can stay where you are. And that's sort of an understandable natural instinct, I think, that people have, sort of self-preservation. But doing that has several sort of unintended consequences too. One is that you can damage the shoreline on either side of a structure like this. So when seas are coming and they hit a wall, the energy of those waves is to either side. And so you're actually exacerbating erosion on either side of a structure. In time, that structure is also going to be undermined too. The other thing it does, though, is in a structure like this, you're cutting off people's access to the shore, or along the shore, I should say. So, you know, in Rhode Island's Constitution, we have something very special, which is a guarantee for passage along the shore for people. When a structure like this goes up, people, certainly at high tide, have their access cut off along the shore. The water and the shoreline belong to everyone. They're public. And because of these kinds of responses to rising seas, to climate change, we are now piecemeal losing pieces of shoreline. And that's scary. And some of it's happening willy-nilly, some of it's happening because our coastal agency can't keep up with it. But there are other reasons too, which I do want to talk to you about. this is sort of the second big, in addition to a bottle bill, the second big campaign we're working on, and that's to really fix our coastal agency, the Coastal Resources Management Council. The CRMC was formed at Save the Bay's urging in the early 70s to actually manage coastal development and protect and restore, and where possible, the natural coastal features of Rhode Island. At the time, I will say the price of getting that agency set up was strong legislative control of it. The Rhode Island General Assembly was in effect put in charge of it. So legislators served on the council, legislative leaders appointed their own members to the council and other people to the council. So that meant that legislators were in a position of saying up or down to things like marina proposals, hotel, waterfront hotel proposals, development. You can imagine the opportunities for shenanigans when that happens, right? So if you're the speaker, just to make it a little more real, if you're the speaker of the House and you appointed someone to the Coastal Council, and that someone is dependent on you as speaker to get a bill passed that they care about, right? So there could be a simple conversation like, I know you want that bill passed, right? Yep. You are going to vote at that meeting of the council tonight, right? Right. Okay. Just want to make sure that we all know that. That's all that needs to be said. And so legislative leaders had deep, deep control of the agency. We joined Common Cause and other groups in the late 90s, early 2000s in a campaign for separation of powers in Rhode Island to end legislative service on these boards and commissions that make these big decisions, and also boards and commissions that dole out millions of dollars in contracts. We won in 2004. Legislators were no longer serving on the council from that point onwards, but I can tell you the price for doing that for Save the Bay was that the whole time we were doing that, our legislative agenda got stopped every year, dead on arrival, because we dared to sort of directly go at the power of the General Assembly. Today, it's not so direct, but we still have a coastal agency, I guess, whose decision-making is opaque. So you have a professional staff of 30, 31 people, biologists, engineers, planners, who do their job day in, day out. When big development decisions are coming, that gets into the hands of this politically appointed council that still exists. And those council members do not have to have any expertise. They're really answerable to no one. They're nominated by the governor and approved by the Senate, but there's not oversight over them. So at its best, the council of CRMC is very inefficient. So they meet twice a month. They have this long line of applications in front of them. If they don't meet quorum, they have to bump things to the next meeting, and so on and so on. So something as simple as an aquaculture application in Tiverton can take 5 years or 6 years. Regardless of whether you think the aquaculture operation should be allowed or not, 5 years is way too long. There are some public access cases that have been at the council level for 20 years. Again, no accountability. So this is a serious problem. The other thing that's happened as the agency's workload has grown with climate change, so think of what's happened. So offshore wind permitting, erosion, coastal storms, development, aquaculture, shoreline access. All these issues have grown and grown and grown in terms of demand, but the Assembly has kept the staff level at 31, I think, for a decade or two, long time, while the workload has grown. And you have to ask yourself, why is that? At the same time, they've restored staff cuts at the Department of Environmental Management by like 40 positions. So why is it that governors over the last 2 decades, and General Assembly leaders over the last few decades have not given our coastal agency the resources it needs to keep up with what is going on in Narragansett Bay, especially in the area of climate change. So what we're looking at is the Quidnessett Country Club wall that they put in illegally in the winter of 2023. The CRMC staff didn't know about it. Someone tipped us off to it, and we called the staff, and they went down and saw it. And they issued a cease and desist order after it was built. But they did what they were supposed to do, and also issued a notice of violation and a series of fines. And you think, and in order to restore the site, take all those boulders away. The club, instead of complying, tried to do very funky maneuvering with the council to try to let the wall stand. And I think the fact that they thought that they could get away with it speaks volumes about how this system is not working for Rhode Island at all. So here we are more than 2 years later, and it still stands. We at Save the Bay have dogged this. We prevented the council from doing what it wanted to do, which is to let it stand in effect. And now we are pressing for full restoration of that site. But again, the fact that the country club felt it had the power and the wherewithal to work whatever connections it had to the council and could get away with it says a lot. It says a lot about the importance of reforming it. I'm going to show you a short clip that our baykeeper, Chris Dodge, did on the shores of Quidnessett a few weeks ago.
To the illegal rock wall constructed by Quidnessett Country Club over 2 years ago. This rock wall has stood in place for that time, despite cease and desist orders and orders to restore from CRMC. The council has given Quidnessett multiple extensions, creating delays that continue to result in multiple harms that have been caused by this rock wall being in place, including impaired public access and harming local habitats like the beach and salt marsh that we find here on the shores of the Quidnessett Country Club. It's been far too long that this rock wall has been in place, and it's time to get this wall down now.
So for the future of Narragansett Bay, this agency needs to be fixed. It just does. And I can tell you that we've been campaigning for this for a couple of years, and the resistance to it, not among rank and file legislators, but among the top legislative leaders and the governor, is really strong. And they won't. What's interesting is that the Speaker of the House, Joe Shekarchi, actually won passage of a bill last year that he called a reform bill, which basically shrunk the size of the council. But also he did it in a way where the current members of the council could stay on and serve. You'll hear a little bit of rhetoric about, we now have, requirements for qualifications, but those are pretty sketchy too. So it's just very telling to me that that they defend it in the way they do. So I would say that the council in the last 5 years has had some horrible decision-making. Their decisions keep being bounced back to them by the courts because they're challenged, because the CRMC is not following its own rules. I don't know if you heard of the Champlain's Marina scandal. I call it a scandal. A few years ago when the council chair and private practice attorney that the council hires, it's not a government attorney, it's a private practice attorney that works for the council. They engineered a backroom deal to allow Champlain's to expand its marina in a way that would hurt the Great Salt Pond and Block Island. And this was after a 17-year battle over that expansion proposal that the staff rejected and that the courts upheld. So they basically went around and literally met in a hotel room in Narragansett one winter right before Christmas and cut a deal with Champlain's to allow them to do that. That's good old Rhode Island politics. It's the kind of thing we should be trying to get rid of, right? But that's what happened. Since that time, there have been no legislative hearings about Champlain's. There have been no legislative hearings about a whole bunch of other bad decision-making by the council not following its own rules and procedures. It's happening time and time again. And again, neither the governor nor the legislature has said not a peep about any of it. So that tells you that we really need to fix it, right? So we are going to continue on, and we're going to get this right. The coast of Rhode Island, Narragansett Bay, is too important to let this thing sit and be underfunded and be controlled by unaccountable people, because that's what's happened now. It's been allowed to happen. If you ever go to a council meeting, you'll see them doing procedural stuff by the seat of their pants, making things up as they go along. It's just not the way it's not how things should be going here when it comes to managing our coast. So, you don't think of stuff, say, the Bay works on as good government or that kind of, but this is a good government issue more than anything else that happens to impact our coastal environment. So I urge you to pay attention to it. I urge you to get involved. We have lots of ways for you to get involved. I can tell you your senator and reps here in town are very supportive of this. It's legislative leadership that's not, and the governor is not. So I want to sort of, I do want to invite some questions and discussion and stuff, but I do want to sort of end my remarks with saying how important it is to get involved in the work of saving Narragansett Bay. And we have some big things to think about now. What kind of bay are we going to leave our kids and grandkids and generations that follow? When I see things like Quidnesset, I worry that we're going to leave them with a concrete and rock-lined bathtub that's not accessible to anyone. But it doesn't have to be that way. It's imperative that we act now to stop this sort of Wild West environment that we've allowed to be created and really get proactive. We're going to be faced with things like moving infrastructure back from the shore. Route 114 won't be around someday. We're going to have to figure out other ways to get to and from Providence. Again, some places like the Warren waterfront are going to look very different. The town of Warren has done something that's really important. They have a program called Market to Metacom, which is in its early stages. But Market Street down by the Palmer River and Belcher Cove gets flooded out regularly. And homes and businesses are at risk. What the town has done is identified that up on the hill part of Metacom Avenue as a place where lots of development can take place. There's land for it. There's lots of unused space. So over time, the plan is to actually relocate. Not every place can do this, but that's sort of a look into the future, because we are going to have to start, in effect, deconstructing what we've built right along the shoreline. And so this place, 50 years from now is going to look very different. And if we do it right, it can be great, and we can have a thriving bay with healthy salt marshes, and a bay that people can actually enjoy by walking on the shore and going fishing or whatever it is they want to do. But we're at this inflection point now where we have to take control of it as a state. So with that, I'd be happy to, I think I dumped a lot on you here, but I'd be happy to take any questions or observations. Yeah.